reached Remastered Turtles review. I'm your man. And today I'll be reviewing from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 1988 Remastered 6-pack. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1988 Remastered 6-pack. But before I get to the actual review, I want to go over some of the spectacular details on this packaging. Up front here, we're showing you with the figure and all the accessories inside. In the top corner, you have the Nickelodeon logo. Below that, you have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles logo. On top here, you have this illustration that has some cool sword deco that carries onto the top of the packaging here and on both sides. And on the bottom of the packaging here, in the middle, it says 1988 Remastered 6-pack. Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, Raphael, Splinter, and Shredder. Then over here, the Playmate Toys logo, and next to that, you have a warning label that says choking hazard, small parts, not for children under 3 years. Then on the bottom of the packaging here, again, you have the Nickelodeon logo over here. Over here, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles logo here. Over here, it says review unlocked content, and there's a barcode underneath it. Then over here, the Playmates logo. Then over here, you have some information about the website. Then on the back of the packaging here, on the top corner, again, you have the Nickelodeon logo. And below that, again, you have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles logo. Over here it says, action figures inspired by the ones that started their collection. Celebrate Turtles history with action figures based on the first wave of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys from 1988. Remastered with new articulation and intricate detail, these characters combine retro styling with modern updates. In the middle here, you have this cool battle in between Splinter and the Turtles versus Shredder. This set includes Splinter with Ninja Bow, Sword Cane, and Ninja Star. Leonardo with 2 katana blades, Raphael with 2 scythes, Michelangelo 2 nunchucks, Donatello with bow staff, and Shredder with sword, short sword, ninja star, fist dagger, and kama. Each figure stands approximately 4 inches tall, and this set is meant for fans ages 4 and up. Now there's Splinter on my display table, so we'll go over some of his play features and accessories. First, I talk about his Ninja Star. If you're a collector back with the original toy line, you realize these Ninja Stars are a staple in your Teenage Mutant Turtles toy line. That is because almost every figure included a Ninja Star. So you're finding these things everywhere. They're in couch cushions, under the bed, wherever you can find these, parents were finding them. And they were not happy finding these things because they're all over the place. But the variation with this Ninja Star is that it has 4 prongs instead of the standard 5. And a nice detail they did with the remastered edition of these accessories is they gave it some color detail where either it be mold detail or paint detail. In this case, it's mold detail because they molded it out of like a silver metallic plastic where if you start at certain angles of light, you get that luster. Very, very nicely done. In order to arm Splinter with this Ninja Star, you just take that Ninja Star in between the fist and the hand, you just push that star in just like that, and now you have Splinter armed with his Ninja Star. Very, very cool. I'm going to pop that out and put that off to the side, because the next accessory I want to bring in is another weapon that was carried over from the original toy line, or the 1988 version of Splinter. That is a sword cane. And much like the original sword cane, you unsheath the cane right here, and it reveals a blade. And the nice detail they did with this sword cane this time is, they gave it that tip, that katana tip, where it's got that angled tip. I'm not sure if you guys can see it. Nice little detail here. And the nice thing is, it's got a tip, but it's not sharp enough to cause any damage, so it gets in the wrong hands, and a little kid jabs another kid with it. It bends away from the point of contact. It's really cool. Or to sheath the blade back into the cane has a little porthole right there. Take that blade and you push it right through just like that. And now you have the blade back in the sword cane. Very, very cool. Order arm Splinter with the sword cane. You take that handle right there and you pop right into his fist just like that. And now you have Splinter armed or holding his sword cane. Very cool. So I have the original sword cane right here. And doing a side-by-side comparison of both sword canes, you'll notice that there's some differences in the actual sculpt of the cane. I don't know if my hands are kind of in the way, but let's see if I can position it so you guys can see it a little bit better. You do see some differences. Then when you unsheath both the canes, you even got some blade differences. Where the original didn't have that katana tip to it, and it's molded out of a harder plastic. So let's say a child does get their hands on this and pokes another child in the eye, it could cause a little bit of damage. It's very pointy and there's not much give in the point of contact like the original. And you sheath it the same way. The porthole for the cane is a little bit bigger, so it slides in easier, but somehow it locks in a place where it doesn't slide back out. Very, very cool. But I'm going to put that off to the side. I'm going to take this one. I'm going to put this off to the side. There's another accessory that was included with this version of Splinter that came with the original, and it's updated, is the bow and arrow. With the original toy, the bow and arrow was molded in one piece, but this time, you can take the arrow, clip it right into the bow. You take Splinter now, and there's a little bit of difficulty in arming the bow sometimes, so you have to turn the arm out so the wrist is exposed, or the hand is exposed, so you can pop this bow right into that hand just like that. And if the points of articulation, you can also have the other hand draw the string, just like that. And now you have Splinter armed with this bow and arrow. Very, very cool. I'm going to take this bow and arrow. And I'm going to show you how to store this bow and arrow, because there's also that option too. If you unclip the arrow, and there's unfortunately not a quiver for this arrow, so you're going to have to find a place for it. You can also put this bow over your shoulder, because it is molded out of rubbery plastic and it does have a little bit of give. So you just put it right over your shoulder just like that. Very, very cool. I'm going to take all these accessories and put them off to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and compare this version of Splinter to the one that he's based on, the 1988 version of Splinter. And this is the reissue that came out a couple years ago, but it's based on the same mold. And the difference is, the original Splinter did have some soft goods. The soft good is anything that's clothing-wise on an action figure, where he had this purple tunic that was held on by this belt. That design element did carry over to the remastered, but they molded this detail on because they wanted to give it the points of articulation that it has. Because the original figure has 8 points of articulation. Back in the 80s, the standard points of articulation was 5. Turtles added 2 more where they had either elbow or wrist articulation. And Splinter has a tail, so it adds the 8th one. But most of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toy line has 7 points of articulation if that figure does not have a tail. Well, with this version of Splinter, you have way more points of articulation. You have ankle, you have knee, you have hip. I don't believe you have waist. No, you don't have waist. You have wrist, elbow, shoulder, and head. So you have a couple more points of articulation, and you have the addition with the tail too. Which is very nice. Because the original Teenage Mutant Turtles toy line had one drawback, and that is because their stances on a package were very stylized, where they were in action poses. They had that extra point of articulation, but when you fully arm them, sometimes they had a difficult time standing on their own. And that's why the additional points of articulation are nice, because now you can pose your turtles in other battle poses, and you could, you could balance that out with the accessories. Unfortunately, with the original Turtle toy line, you don't have that option. I actually used the original Splinter's tail to kind of prop them up so they don't fall over. But very, very nice done. But the one thing I did forget to talk about is the original Splinter's bow was molded out of one piece, where the arrow, the bow, and the string are all molded together in one piece. Unlike the remastered edition, where you had that option of arming him with the bow and arrow, or drawing his, you had to figure draw the string back. It's a cool addition to this version of Splinter, because you have more options to pose your figure in different poses, as opposed to this the bow and arrow being kind of fixed in one position, where the only thing Splinter could really do is hold the bow and arrow, like that. Which is still a cool accessory, but I'm glad that they went ahead and stayed very loyal to this version of, the figure, because, this is a remastered edition. And the thing with the original Turtles toy line, and I'm not sure a lot of people knew about this, and it's kind of like a, something that's been lingering with a lot of us old school collectors, is why did our toys now look like anything like the cartoon series? And that is because the cartoon series and the toy were released simultaneously at the same time. Because the toy designs were actually based on the comic book renditions of the figures. So the character designs were drawn directly from the comic book, because there was no animation to base the toys on yet, or there was no toys to base the animation on. Because this version, the remastered version, I believe, is more based on the anime model from the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon series. He has that cartoony look, as opposed to the original Splinter looking kind of like a rat. And that's because in the comic book he looked like this. And that's why you get the different, looks for certain characters like Rat King, and even the Turtles themselves, where they had the whited out eyes and they had the gritty look to them. And that's because the comic book had more of a grittier, grosser tone than the cartoon series, where the cartoon series was very cartoony and bubbly almost. But I want to go and rotate these figures around so you can see the similar differences all on your own. I think that this Splinter is a very welcome addition to the toy line, and I'm hoping in the future that they would go ahead and they remaster other groups of figures, because I'm very happy so far with what I've seen, what the Playmates has done with this new 6-pack. Now that I have Leonardo on my display table, let's go over some of his play features and accessories. First, I talk about his katanas. It includes 2 of these katanas. These katanas are fantastic. A big improvement over the original 1988 version because, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of their accessories were molded out of an orange plastic. This one has a lot of paint detail to it, where the blade hilt is actually molded out of a gray silver plastic. And the handle here is actually painted a blue detail right there. And that's representative of the actual color of that respective turtle, where Leonardo's color is blue. And the nice thing is you get a lot of great mold detail even on the blade, where you get this line detail to kind of show that the blade's sharpened. You get that tip here where it kind of has that angled tip like a regular katana would have. The hilt details are square. And the tidbit behind that is ninjas used to plant katanas into the ground and use the hilt as a way to step or propel themselves over tall walls or obstacles. So that was a cool design element, which did not carry over from the original, because the original here kind of had that, you know, they had that rubbery plastic look where it was very flimsy. Did not have the square hilt. But the one detail that original katana did have was you had the little portholes right here in the handle. You get that little thing on the end for the hilt right here, which you kind of have, but it looks like they had them wrap the handle instead of having these little katana handle details on there. But in order to arm Leonardo with his katana, you take the handle here, you press it between his fingers and his thumb, just like that. And just like that, now you have Leonardo armed with both of his katanas, which is really cool. And the one thing that I think is very unique about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toy line from the 1988 original release was they were maybe the first toy line where you could store your weapons on your figures. Because a lot of times with like Star Wars and G.I. Joe, they'd have weapon detail that were in holsters and stuff, but that was a mold detail where it was part of the actual figure where you couldn't take the weapon out. Well, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles gave you a means to store your weapons on your figures, which is really cool because ninjas had all kinds of little gadgets stored on their person. And you just slide the swords right into his backpack, just like that. And just like that. It's very cool because now you can have them with the weapons stored as if they were on the TV series, because a lot of times you saw when they weren't drawing their weapons, you saw the weapons stored on their backpacks or on their belts, which is really, really cool. I'm going to go ahead and bring in, I know this one's kind of having a hard time standing, but I'm going to bring in my original Leonardo. And as I mentioned earlier on, their poses were very stylized, where they had wide stances, and with this version of Leonardo, you had one leg forward, one leg back, and you had the heel kind of arched up. So, I mean, he's really stylized, so you got to have his feet perfectly flat for him to stand. Which most action figure companies, you do have to have the feet flat anyway. But I mean, if you look at the wide stance and how the one leg's forward and back and the arms are way out, this kind of makes it a very big challenge. And I mean, this is the only pose you really put him in while you're displaying him, unfortunately, because like I said, in order for him to stand with both these parts being flat, that's the only position you can have him standing in, as opposed to the dynamic availability of poses for this version of Leonardo. And you arm the swords the same way. You press them in. And another design element that kind of carried over from the original figure is the storage of the weapon, where the backpack, I mean, it's redesigned to fit this version of Leonardo, but there's a lot of design elements that carry over from the original 1988 line, which is very, very cool. Why don't I go ahead and stick his swords in his backpack like I did with the remastered version, and they go in the same way. I mean, the swords are a different size, and let me go ahead and do a side-by-side comparison with the swords real quick. Because the original sword is actually a little bit longer. And like I said, the handle detail is a little bit different. I don't know if you guys can see that. And I do love that they went ahead and went above and beyond with the remastered version by adding some color to the accessories, because that was something that they kind of neglected with the original toy run. But I'm going to put that sword back in. because I kind of want you guys to see what they look like side by side. And you'll notice that each individual turtle has a different molded face. They aren't exact redecos of each other, which you're going to see with the original toy line. They actually molded all 4 heads differently, so they're kind of distinctive between the figures. And you notice with Leonardo, he's got the teeth on the one side, which kind of was a design element that carried over. For some reason, they colored this side of the mouth, which the original did not have, but it's kind of cool. But you'll notice that with all the turtles, they did keep the same facial expression on both turtles. But I'm going to rotate them around so you can see what they look like from all angles, so you can see all the differences and similarities on your own. And as you can see with the shell with the remastered version, the shell is really detailed. As you can see a lot of shell detail on there, as opposed to the original where you do have some of that shell detail, but you have some battle damage too, which is really, really cool. I'm going to go ahead and continue rotating around so you can see what it looks like from all angles. Now that I have Raphael on my display table, let's go over some of his play features and accessories. First of all, I talk about his size. It includes 2 of these sides, and these sides are different because they're based on the actual design of an actual side. And growing up with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I thought sides were knives with little hilts or little prongs on the end of them. But they actually look like this, where they're like little cylinders, little metal poles that are cut short and have these prongs on it. And this is more of a defensive weapon. These weren't offensive weapons, because when I went to Japan and I saw the reality of a sai, I was a little disappointed because they are not weapons. They're more for a tool of defense, because they would block swords and they would break the blades off with it. I mean, you can cause some damage with the sai by stabbing an opponent with it, but you have to use a lot of force, and it's just like being jabbed with a metal bar, almost. But in order to arm Raphael with these sai, you want to take the handle of the sai, and Raphael's hands aren't open as much as the other turtles, so you want to kind of pry them open. It does conform to the original shape, and I don't see any stress marks being put on this figure, because the other figures I did see some stress marks with Splinter. You know, when I tried to pry his fingers open, I saw some stress marks, so I wouldn't advise prying open Splinter's hands. Raphael, I haven't witnessed any stress marks so far, but now I have Raphael armed with his sai. And like I mentioned earlier on, every turtle has a means of storing their weaponry. You can take the sai now and stick them right into his belt, much like you did with the original figure. And that's a design element that kind of carried through, and like I mentioned earlier on, that was a unique trademark of the figures, because back in 1988, that wasn't very common for figures to be able to store their weapons. Now you have Raphael with his sai stored while he's, waiting for battle. It's really, really cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring in the original Raphael, and this is the reissue again. And out of the 4 turtles, Raphael was the lightest. And Raphael personally is one of my favorite turtles, and I say that because in the movie and in the comic book, he was way different than he was in the cartoon series. The cartoon series, he was kind of, cracking a lot of jokes. Well, he was a tough guy in the movie and in the comic book, and that's why he's my favorite. And you can see this facial expression right here, which kind of carried over, where his eyes are a little bit more squinted, where he means business. And he's got that grit, that gritting teeth, where it's kind of like you see teeth on both sides, which is another design element that kind of carried through. And like I said in the back earlier on with the turtle shell design, there's no battle damage, but there's a lot of shell detail, as opposed to the original toy line where you do see some battle damage, you see some like gashes from the shell, probably from training or whatnot, foot soldiers. And in the back of the belt, this is for a weapon. I'm not sure if that design element carried through to this one, but you get the comma that some of these figures come with, and you can stick that in the back here. I'm not sure if that really is what it's meant for this figure. But in the original figure, you can store the comma on the back of the turtle shell. It's really, really cool. I'll put that off to the side for now. But like I said earlier on with the sai, this is what I always thought a sai looked like as a kid, because you get that little blade right there, and it's pointed, and it could cause some damage if it gets in the wrong hands, like I mentioned earlier on. Maybe a kid pokes another kid in the eye with it. There's really no give to it. When it hits the point of contact, it doesn't bend away from the point of contact, so it's pretty sharp. But to me, I always thought this was a blade. I'm sure this might be a variation of the sai, because they're not just going to make up a design element for a sai for a ninja cartoon series unless they do some research. And I'm sure that they found a design element that made the sai into an actual weapon or a knife. But like I said, when you compare the two side by side, This side here represents more of what I saw in Japan. This is what I saw on Teenage Mutant Ninja cartoon or the toy line. So my perception of what a Sai was greatly skewed because of Raphael's design for his Sai. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the Sai into the belt. I'm gonna take this Sai and put it off to the side because, like I said with the Turtles, with the stylized poses, his isn't too bad. He just has his knees apart. I mean, his feet are flat, so he doesn't really have that whole potential of falling over easily. I mean, he'll fall over still. But I'm gonna go rotate them so you guys see what they look like from all angles. I mean, a lot of design elements did carry through. He is the lightest of the 4 in the 6-pack, but still he's not this green. I mean, this green is like a really white green. It's very, very light. And I mean, even with the reissue, the quality control was pretty awful because I got some red paint on his head right here, and I'm not gonna go ahead and remove it. But I mean, I'm just happy to have him again because, you know, losing my collection and selling them off, I was a big regret, and I wish I could get my figures back. But until then, the reissues are good enough. But if you get your hands on these remastered figures, they're even better. Now that Michelangelo on my display table, we'll go over some of his play features and accessories. First by talking about his nunchuck. And he comes with 2 of these nunchucks, and these nunchucks are a vast improvement over the original, even the reissues in some cases, because they're actually linked by a chain, which you have that free movement, which is really, really cool. In order to arm Michelangelo with his nunchucks, I want to go ahead, I'm going to pry his fingers open. I'm hoping it doesn't cause any stress marks. And I'm going to go ahead and slide these nunchucks to the top of the hand, just like that. Do that to the other side. It looks like the left hand is like open more than the right hand for some reason with all the figures. I'm not sure if they're using the same molds for all the hands, but it seems like the nunchucks fit perfectly. Very, very cool. And now you have Michelangelo armed with his nunchucks. And I love that they gave that free chain, which is really, really cool. That'd be something that they would never consider back in the day. You take these nunchucks, and also, like I mentioned earlier on with all these figures, you can store your weapons on your figures. And this is a design element that carried over from the original, where you can store your weapons on his backpack, where you can just stick it right in these little prongs right here. And I know this is very, very new. I'm not going to stick them all the way through because, you know, I don't want to cause any damage. So I'm just going to stick them to the top of the portholes right here. Now, as long as they're staying in place, I'm not going to push them all the way in. And now you have Michelangelo with his nunchuck stored on his back. Very, very cool. And the nice thing is, I know the nunchuck's a little bit heavier, so I'm going to have to bend them over a little bit so it kind of balances out. And that's cool about these figures is, with the points of articulation, you can change their stance to kind of compensate for balance issues or whatnot. Unlike the original figures, which I do have here. And this one's not too bad. I mean, with the one foot right there, you see it's kind of not firmly planted. So it's kind of got a stylized pose, but it's a little bit more conservative than the other figures. Now you see the design of the facial feature did carry over, where his sneers on this side of the mouth, where that side of the mouth is kind of plain, where there's no teeth showing. They painted that side in for some reason. It's kind of the opposite of, I believe it was Leonardo, where Leonardo had his teeth on that side of the mouth. But it's very cool because they made every turtle individual, which is nice, where they just didn't do the same sculpt for all 4 turtles, just changed the color, which is a very nice detail they did with that. But you see a lot of design elements carried over with the back of the belt here. You got those little holsters for the nunchucks. And the bad thing about the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figure is, you had that, like I said, that the weaponry were all molded out of that brown-orange plastic, right? The bad thing is, I stored my nunchucks in there, and you see some stress marks coming in with that little connection between the 2 nunchucks. And mine snapped while I was on display. Like this part right there snapped in half. So I kind of kept my Michelangelo displayed where he was holding a nunchuck like this, where there wasn't that much stress in the actual string right there. That's why I feel the change were a welcome addition. And unfortunately, because the original figure, I don't remember having that issue with the string. But with the reissue, that does have a lot of risk for breaking. But you can store it the same way. I don't recommend it on the reissue, but you arm his nunchucks the same way you armed the remastered version, just like that. But Michelangelo has kind of, not he's in the darkest of the 4. I believe the darkest is Donatello. So he's kind of on the second from the lightest of the spectrum of green, where Raphael's the lightest, there's Michelangelo, then Leonardo, then Donatello's the darkest. and that design element actually carried over with the remastered version. So the facial design, even with the belt, you know, all that carried over. I mean, they actually fixed certain flaws in the original figures with stylized poses that are kind of off center, where they have more points of articulation to kind of balance out their stances. But I'm going to rotate around Michelangelo so you guys can see what he looks like from all angles. And Michelangelo was extremely popular because of the characterization in the cartoon series, where he was like the party animal, and you know, he was just a lot of fun, loving pizza and yelling cowabunga all the time. It's just something that I never really caught on to because, like I said, I was more drawn to Raphael, but Michelangelo was also a favorite with a lot of my friends. Now that I have Donatello on my display table, we'll go over some of his play features and accessories. First by talking about his bow staff. And this bow is ginormous. It's a big accessory. It's way bigger than the original bow, which I do have on hand. You do a side-by-side comparison. As you can see, it's much bigger. I love that they did the paint detail also with this bow where it's purple right here, which is very cool because it's very symbolic of their actual representation in their color, because Donatello's color is purple. In order to arm Donatello, you just slide the bow right into the top of his hand, just like that, and now you have Donatello armed with this bow. And you can arm him with both hands because it is a staff, where, like I said, the point of articulation, you can actually have it meet where you can just slide it through one hand and slide it to the other, where he's armed with both hands, which I'm having a hard time with because it's a newer figure, but it's very doable, which now I have Donatello armed with his bow. And also, like I mentioned earlier on, all the weapons can be stored on your figures, because on the back of Donatello's belt pack, or backpack right here, you get that belt right there where you can slide the bow right through this little port just like that, and now you have his bow stored while he's not in battle. Very, very cool. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the original Donatello. You can see this one will stand because this has got the accessory in it. And as I mentioned earlier on, Donatello is the darker of the 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figures. And he has a special place in my heart because he was actually my very first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figure. So Donatello, by the time I got my entire collection, he was kind of loosest because I played with him non-stop. I loved my Donatello. He wasn't my favorite, but he was my first, so that's why he has a special place in my heart. And the cool thing, like I said, with the points of articulation and stylized poses, is you could have the original figures posed and ready for battle, which was something that was very unique. And I mean, you only got that out of one other toy line. That was Masters of the Universe, where they had the stances, but all their stances were the same, not like the Turtles where they had individual stances. So if you had all 4 Turtles displayed next to each other, they were all ready for battle in their own stances. And it kind of displayed some of their weaknesses and character traits through their stance. But I do enjoy having the additional points of articulation so I could make my own decisions on how I want my Turtles displayed, as opposed to having the stance that the figure's molded to stand in, which is very cool. I'm going to go ahead and take this bow and put it on his back because it pretty much was a design element that carried over into the remastered version of Donatello. But you could also store both the belts the same way. The straps look the same, so a lot of design elements did carry through. Like I said, with the shell detail, same. You got some awesome shell detail for the remasters. Here you have some basic, but has battle damage, which is really, really cool. With the facial expression, again, you got the sneering with both sides of the mouth. You know, it's just a cool play feature that kind of carried over time. And the remasters are just fantastic representation of the original figures. I mean, they did actually just take the original figures and update them with the additional points of articulation, made the weapons better, added some detail to the weapons. Just an overall great improvement over the original. And the original is great. It's just that I never in my wildest imagination thought they would go ahead and remaster the figures, and that seems like a trend nowadays, because I noticed like Hasbro's done that with the Transformers toy line, with the G.I. Joe toy line, and Playmates was not foolish in not following suit, because Mattel even did that with the Masters of the Universe Origin figures, where they actually took the original figures and added points of articulation to kind of make it unique and just a different toy line where collectors will go ahead and clamor for these remastered figures. And I'm glad Playmates is following suit, and I'm hoping they'll do that with other additional figures too. Now that I have Shredder on my display table, we'll go over some of his play features and accessories. First by talking about his Ninja Star. And this Ninja Star is standard. It kind of looks very similar to the ones that came with the original figures where it had the 5 prongs, and it's tiny. So I'm not sure if you could actually arm the Ninja Star in his hand, but the hands have kind of an openness. I think you could probably put it in his hand if you put the thumb through the little porthole in the middle of the star. We'll put that off to the side. The next accessory I'm going to bring in is the fist dagger right here. The fist dagger here is nice details. It was actually an accessory that came with the original figures. And you just pretty much arm it by taking a handle and put it right into the hand just like that. I know Shredder's hands kind of got that openness to it, so it doesn't really hold a lot of accessories too well. I'm going to put that off to the side, because now you have the comma. And this is another accessory that came standard with a lot of the original Teenage Mutant Turtle figures. You arm that the same way. We take the handle, put it right into the hand just like that. But the next accessories I want to bring in are his 2 swords. He has a regular sword and a short dagger. And you arm those the same way. You just put them right into his hand just like that. And I'm going to the sword and put it right in his hand just like that. Now you have Shredder armed with the sword. And this Shredder is very unique because he's actually displayed the way he was meant to look. And I say that because when the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toy line came out, Shredder came packaged with his cape inside of his belt. So a lot of times you'll see Shredder displayed with this cape inside his belt. Well, since this is based on the comic design, he had a cape that flowed freely in the comic book, where he was shirtless, not like the cartoon series where I believe he's wearing gray or something. He's wearing something or a shirt in the cartoon series, but can't really have a cartoon series with the main protagonist without a shirt on. I mean, they got away with it certain toy lines and cartoon series, but with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they decided to make it very, very kid-friendly, so they put him in the fully clothed on that cartoon series. But with the original figure, which I do have on hand, his cape was a soft good. I'm going to take all the accessories and put them off to the side, which was really cool. And the one thing about Shredder was his stance was very, very stylized, where, as you can see, his legs are very, very far apart. His foot's kind of got that weird angle at the ankle. It's just really, really hard to kind of get him to stand in the position, which I actually am pulling off right now, but I mean, you gotta have him like kind of angled really strangely. And I displayed my Shredder with the cape out because that's the way the comic book looked, and a lot of times with the promotional material for the original toy line did show Shredder with the cape out, but since it was packaged with the belt around the cape, a lot of people kept the cape underneath his belt, which now this further proves my theory that that was not correct, and he was meant to be displayed with the cape out. And this figure right here is a great update because, like I said, this was such a stylized pose where he's so like keeled over and does not look tall and strong to me. And the one detail I'm glad they did was he had this purple, I don't know if it's underwear or loincloth right there. They took that detail off with the remastered version, just made it all black, where he's wearing like almost like a gi. And the cool thing is they did carry some design elements over where he does have the armor still sharpened. Right here it's kind of pointing down. His eyebrows kind of stuck out a little bit further, and I think that's more of a design element from the comic book. It kind of looked like it's in a comic book, where as opposed to where he's kind of a nice little blend of the cartoon series, the original toy, and the comic book, where all 3 elements are kind of put into one figure, where that's where Shredder's actual remastered design comes from, where it was inspired from all 3 elements as opposed to the original figure just being based on the comic book design. And in the comic book, Shredder actually is only in it for a short duration of time because, like in the movie, he did fall into a garbage can, or not garbage can, a garbage truck and got crushed. And he never came back after that, and that's how he perishes in the actual original comic book. In the movie, he comes back in the second movie. The cartoon series, that seems to happen at the end of every episode where he loses to the turtles and comes back the next episode almost like refreshed. But Shredder was very short-lived, but he had such a strong presence in the cartoon series and in the lore of the movies that he remained the main protagonist throughout most of the Turtles' existence, except for the comic book, of course. But nonetheless, I would say that he's a great update to Shredder. I'm kind of glad he did it. And out of all 6 figures, next to Splinter, he's probably the most improved out of the 6. But I'm gonna go ahead and bring in the whole ensemble. I'll bring in Leonardo, bring in Splinter, go ahead and bring in Michelangelo, who's, like I said, the most popular turtle. My favorite, Raphael. And if I can find him real quickly, my first turtle, Donatello. But if you guys found any of the information in this review valuable, please like. If you found any of the information in this review valuable, please like and share this video. Also, if you really enjoy my content, please subscribe to my channel. And while you're there, click the bell to be notified of any future videos. I want to thank you guys for watching Red Steele's Toy Collector Review. I'll check you guys out next time.